I have filmed this part like 3 times, but I'm gonna do it again because something was wrong with the focus of the camera. If this is not gonna work, I'm still gonna use the footage, so I apologize in advance. I want to preface this whole thing by saying I was not really into reading when I was younger. I was always sort of like physically active and sporty all my life and never really into reading. But for like the last 4 or 5 years, I would say, I've been very much integrating reading into my everyday life. My boyfriend introduced fantasy stuff to me. I never really was into fantasy at all. I would only ever probably read things that, in my opinion, were very realistic or, you know, about real people and real cities and worlds, or like our world. But I have really been enjoying the fantasy part, and it's just opened up so much in my head, and it's sort of like so freeing to be able to have such a strong imagination, which you do get with reading, which is something I really love. I wanted to talk about some books that have, over the last few years, really stayed with me. Now, these books in particular are not super intense fantasy stuff. They are based like in the real world, probably not real stories. They are obviously fictional. But so one of the books that has really stayed with me is The Seven Wives of Evelyn Hugo. Now let me check who this is by. It's by Taylor Jenkins Reid, and I really enjoyed this book because the main character was so intriguing to me. I just love the fact that the main character obviously is... Did I constantly say the wives? I found this book so intriguing because of the way this story was sort of set up. I wouldn't say that it is anything out of the ordinary or like absolutely unheard of the way this is being told, but I just really enjoyed the format of it, and I loved the fact that the main character was such an intriguing woman that, for the time where this book was set in, did things out of the ordinary and was just a very progressive person, in my opinion, for the time that it was set in. So I really enjoyed reading that. I found it very easy to just keep reading. I didn't want to put it down. I remember a book that is probably very similar to that one, or if you did enjoy The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, you will probably also enjoy City of Girls by Elizabeth Gilbert. I found this story as well, so it was provocative. It was, I think, quite modern for, again, the time that it was set in. I liked this whole setting in the story, the main character that was surrounded by all of those different women that were also sort of like very out there for the time back then. I really also loved reading this book. There's, you know, some taboos in the book that for me felt very progressive. Reading this, obviously it's not a real story, but one could kind of imagine that it might have been real, which I found also very intriguing, which I really enjoyed. Another book that I loved reading is Atonement by Ian McEwan. You might know the movie. Keira Knightley and James McAvoy played the two leads in that movie. Absolutely loved it. Benedict Cumberbatch is also in that film. I think it came out in 2007, so it is already a little while ago, but I think that might be one of my favorite books of all time. Ian McEwan's writing is just so artistic and beautiful and allows the reader so much introspection into the main character. And reading this book, you get certain feelings about certain people that Ian McEwan somehow invokes very strongly. And I really enjoyed that. I found the story very captivating, and really, really loved that book. So I would kind of put those 3 books in a similar category for, I don't know, I think that if you enjoy one of those books, you'll probably enjoy the others out of this category as well. I do want to talk about fantasy books though as well, because how I got into reading over the last few years was my boyfriend introduced me to Brandon Sanderson's works. I started reading all of the Mistborn books, so the first, and I read the second trilogy as well. Maybe I listened to it by audiobook, I'm not sure, but I did definitely read the first trilogy of Mistborn. And I really enjoyed that as my sort of start into this fantasy sphere, I would say. I found those books very YA. They are not quite 100% what I would probably love to read. The world building is obviously absolutely insane. Brandon Sanderson is, I think, a pioneer on that sort of aspect of writing books. He is a devout Mormon, which shows a little bit in his works because he, in Mistborn, doesn't include any kind of explicit content. I'm not even sure if there is a kiss, probably. There's maybe 1 or 2 little pecks here and there, but that is it. So it's more like adventure, war, fighting, quite on an epic scale. I would say Stormlight Archive is even more epic and bigger than the Mistborn stuff, but if you're into that, you might enjoy those books. And as you can imagine, reading all of that probably would take someone quite a lot of time, and it did. I think it took me like 2 years or 3 years to read all of that. And I tried to sort of like sprinkle in between standalone books by different authors, different worlds, not so much fantasy, because I felt like I needed a little bit of a palate cleanse every now and then. And books that I really enjoyed reading sort of in between the bigger, longer ones were, for example, The House in the Cerulean Sea. I came across that while I was scrolling Instagram. A book influencer was talking about it, and I felt like it sounded very cute and cozy because he described reading this book as like cuddling up in a blanket, reading obviously this cute and cozy novel, drinking your favorite tea, and I just felt that sounds quite cozy, so I'll give it a try. And it was very cute. It was, again, very young adult themed, is a little bit LGBTQ themed as well, and all in all, I would say it was a very sweet book. Finished that quite quickly. Another standalone book that I read and absolutely loved. I think there's split opinions on this, but I am definitely team I loved it. Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I'm not usually into sci-fi, never really was, never read any kind of sci-fi books, but this book was absolutely incredible. I feel the way Andy Weir portrayed all of the, sort of like astronaut information, calculations, spaceship stuff was very, at least for me, very easily, it was easy to read it. I really felt like I very much understood what was going on. I could follow along easily, and I really, really enjoyed reading it. It did wreck me at certain points, but I love when a book does that. Don't know what that says about me, but I love being emotionally wrecked by something that I'm reading. And that definitely did that at some points. Loved the premise, loved the setting. Yeah, really, really enjoyed that. A book that I found very humorous, very funny, but also heavy at some points was The Wedding People by Alison Esbach. That was a very quick read as well. It was recommended to me by a friend, and I'm really glad I read it. It was a very, very nice book. not too deep, but a very nice like book that you can read alongside maybe of something else. And I really had a few laughs. It was very, yeah, it was a good book. I really enjoyed that. Another book that I really, really loved was Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. That was definitely not a light read. It wasn't, I would say it was a little bit on the heavier side. It was quite emotionally touching. It felt at times lonely, but very fair, very righteous, and also a little bit sort of like scary, crimey, like crime themed. Yeah, I really, really like that. I hope those words that I'm throwing out there are not too strange or like incoherent, but in my opinion, they kind of describe the books, at least to me, in a way where I don't spoil what goes on in the books, which I really try not to do. It was sort of very nature focused as well, so it felt relieving of city life, you know, many people. I felt like that was sort of like a breath of fresh air, but also dramatic. I don't know. I hope that people who have read the book understand what I'm talking about. I also read The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna, and I did quite enjoy that. It didn't feel very deep. It didn't feel very unique. I liked the setting because it plays in Alaska. It was also quite dramatic. It was touching. It did make me quite emotional at stages, but it was quite predictable in my opinion. I still enjoyed reading it though. Two other books that have somehow changed me, or they did something with my brain chemistry, I'm not sure, but I absolutely loved The Song of Achilles and Circe by Madeline Miller. Her writing is so artistic and beautiful, and it feels like every sentence is like a work of art in and of itself. The storytelling, she writes, for example, like a few sentences that describe a certain period of time and give so much information and feeling in just one sentence without saying many words, if that makes sense. It is an absolute storytelling masterpiece in my opinion. I generally love the Greek mythology stories, and if you do, you'll probably enjoy these books as well. They are absolute top class writing. Her style is beautiful, and those two books wrecked me. The Song of Achilles probably a little bit more than Circe, I'm not sure, but I think I did cry a few times with Circe as well. Yeah, absolutely loved these books. Other fantasy books I read, or like another fantasy series, which is quite current, is The Will of the Many and the Strength of the Few by James Islington. The third book, I think, is going to be published by either the end of this year or next year. And I'm definitely going to read that as well. I did very much enjoy the first book. The second one was maybe not quite as good as the first one, but it did really, really touch me as well at certain points. And I really, really enjoy the main character and the storyline in general. It got sometimes a little bit weird, but I still really, really did enjoy that. And I'm very excited for the third book. Very, very fantasy heavy, but still very intriguing. And I want to finish this off by talking about probably my favorite author ever, Robin Hobb. She is a queen and a goddess in my eyes. Her writing is absolutely impeccable. She is the author of the Realm of Elderling series. It's a series consisting of 16 books. I have read so far the first trilogy, and I'm halfway through the second trilogy, so I'm about halfway through the second book of the second trilogy. The first trilogy tells the story of a young boy who is being trained to become an assassin at a royal court. I'm not going to say more about that, but that is sort of the main theme of the first trilogy. And the second trilogy is sort of like a pirate ship sailing sort of murky, dark shanty towns, a little bit like disgusting, sort of grimy. The trilogies are not connected. They do play in the same realm, which is the realm of elderlings, obviously, but the stories are only connected quite distantly to one another. Maybe I'll find out a little bit more once I finish the second trilogy. I absolutely loved the first trilogy. The characters, the world that Robin Hobb created, the feelings that she conveys with her writing, her storytelling style is so incredible. It's not quite as artistic as Madeline Miller in The Song of Achilles and in Circe. It feels a little bit more contemporary, the way she writes, but equally as beautiful, and it's read smooth as butter, in my opinion. Her style really spoke to me, really touched me. The pace of the story is incredible. It's just overall an absolute masterpiece. And if you are at all into fantasy, I really, really encourage you to give the Realm of Elderlings a go, especially the very first trilogy. It's called the Farseer trilogy, and I really think you might love it if you are into fantasy. I am back with part 2 of this video. I filmed part 1 a few days ago, and I kind of forgot to talk about all the books that I wanted to read in the near future. As I mentioned a million times, the World Trilogy. I'm trying not to say that word again because it triggered me to my core. I'm obviously in the middle of as I said, the second 3 books of those 16 books by Robin Hobb, and I would say I'm about halfway through. I am probably going to read, after I finish that, not the 3rd book, but one of these books. I really like switching up, as I said before, like once I'm sort of stuck in one world, I'm not going to say trilogy again, once I'm stuck in one world, I do like mixing it up and reading something completely different. I have a list of books here, which is why I'm always looking down here, and also on my laptop I've got a list. The top book that I have here is is Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. This is a classic. I honestly don't exactly know what it's about, apart from a group of women is my guess. I have heard about this book, that it is quite gut-wrenching, and loads of people post videos like, no, that's actually not this book. That is A Little Life. A Little Life is also a book that I have on Kindle that I'm going to read at some point. I don't have that here in book form, but I do have it on my Kindle. So A Little Life is what I want to read, which is a very heart-wrenching book apparently. But I think so is what I've heard. I'm not so sure. But I really do want to read this because it is quite a classic. Another book that I have here is The Housemaid's Secret. I read obviously the first book. This is the second book. It is a set of 3 books by Frida McFadden. Apparently, is the 4th book coming out? I'm not so sure. Don't want to spread fake news, but the first book was really enjoyable. I read that before watching the film. I didn't like the film. I got this book quite a long time ago, at least 6 years. It's The Secret History by Donna Tartt. And I think when I got this book back then, I tried reading it. I think I had to start reading it like 15 times because I just couldn't get my brain into the zone and into this book. I think I was just a little bit too immature, and that was also the time where I was not very big on reading. And things have changed around here. So I do think that the next time I try this, I'm going to be successful in reading it. It is apparently very, very... About 1.5 years ago, I want to say, I was on holiday with my sister in Scotland. And I bought these two books because when I travel to places, especially Scotland or like the north, I really like this Celtic vibes, themes, witches, all of that stuff. And obviously this book is called The Last Witch of Scotland by Philip Paris, which is about a witch, is my guess. And this plays in the Scottish Highlands in 1727. And there's a line on this book and it says, "Being a woman was her only crime." Well, that made me buy this book because fuck the patriarchy. Yeah, I think this is probably going to be quite an exciting read. So yeah, hopefully it does give what I expect it to. And the second book that I got in Scotland is The Maiden by Kate Foster. And that is also a book set in Edinburgh in October 1679. So I think that is going to be quite exciting to read as well. It is about a woman who is charged with the murder of her lover, and it's about a murder trial, basically, and her story. So quite cool. I really enjoy reading historical fiction because I feel it does... Obviously, it's not historically completely accurate, but I think those kind of books, they do paint a good picture of what the sort of life was like back then, and I really like being sort of teleported into those kinds of worlds, and I really do enjoy reading historical fiction. Another book that I have here, I actually got this recently when I was in the bookstore with my sister. These two books, actually. This is the book called My Year of Rest and Relaxation, and it is by Ottessa Moshfegh. I just think the cover looks so iconic, and this is... I'm going to read this sentence here. "The shocking and strangely tender story of a young woman's efforts to duck the ills of the world with the help of one of the worst psychiatrists in the annals of literature." I read a sentence along the lines of, how can you be happy in the world where being happy is one of the most difficult things with everything going on? This plays in the year 2000. The last two books I want to talk about are Brave New World, which apparently is also a classic. And I think that this is going to be very provocative, and I'm quite looking forward to reading this because I do think that this is going to be quite exciting to read. I always feel I have to read the classics, and then I find that I quite struggle with them, which is a little bit annoying because I do want to share in this general opinion of books that are phenomenal to the broad public. Same as with Wuthering Heights. That's probably a different kind of classic, but I just really couldn't get into that. I really tried to read it and I just immediately lost my focus. Like, I could not stay concentrated. And I really had planned on reading that before watching the film. And apparently the film that they made completely butchered the original intent of the author's story. So now I feel like I do have to read it to kind of understand the original intent. So we will see. The last one that I have here is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. And this is about like a dystopian future where birth rates completely went down. Women are sort of being used as incubators to produce children. And I just found this storyline very, very compelling. I think it is a very critical view of what the world could be. And apparently this is also sort of quite a heavy read. So we will see. I'm going to have to probably do a few knitting breaks in between I think a book that I actually forgot to talk about is 1984 by George Orwell. I don't have that here. I do have it on my Kindle. And obviously that is a classic as well. Loads of people, probably loads of you as well, have had to read this book in school. It was never part of my curriculum, but I have heard about this book for a very long time now. And obviously I think with these times today, especially with the situation in the US, with this huge divide between left and right, and certain things sounding quite similar as the topic covered in 1984. It is sad, it is shocking, and I definitely think that that's going to be a book that probably rattles you as well, which I'm probably also going to need a break from afterwards. So I feel like most of the books here are quite heavy. They are not particularly light and funny, but if you do have any suggestions about maybe some light-hearted things, or also books that, you know, in your opinion, changed your life, I'm really, really open to suggestions. So please drop them down in the comments below, and I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. I wish you a really, really nice rest of your day, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. I've got a knitting video planned, so you can keep an eye open for that if you like. Bye!